At exactly 11:30 p.m., the guards at Alcatraz made their final round. They checked the locks, counted the prisoners, and glanced into each cell. Nothing seemed out of place. 3 men lay quietly in their beds, faces turned toward the wall. Everything looked normal. What the guards didn't know was that the beds were empty. By morning, the most secure prison in the United States would be exposed as a lie, and the men responsible would vanish without a trace. Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary sat alone in the middle of San Francisco Bay, surrounded by icy water and violent, unpredictable currents. The prison was built on isolation. The water temperature rarely rose above freezing, and the distance to shore was just far enough to kill hope. Prison officials were confident. Escape was not just unlikely, it was impossible. If the guards didn't stop you, the bay would. 1960. 3 inmates arrived who paid attention to details others ignored. Frank Morris, John Anglin, and Clarence Anglin were not the loudest men in the prison. They didn't cause trouble. They watched. Frank Morris was especially dangerous, not because of strength, but because of intelligence. He had escaped from multiple prisons before. The Anglin brothers had spent their childhood swimming in cold rivers, building endurance most people never needed. From the moment they entered their cells, they noticed something small, something no one else cared about. The walls were weak. Behind each cell was a tiny ventilation opening. The concrete around it was soft, crumbling from decades of salt air. The prison was old, and time had been eating it from the inside. Using spoons stolen from the cafeteria, the men began digging. Slowly, carefully, every night, just a little more. When music hour came, Frank Morris played his accordion, drowning out the sound of metal scraping concrete. The guards heard music. They never heard escape being built. To hide the growing holes, the men placed cardboard grates over them, painted to perfectly match the walls. Behind the cells, they carved out a hidden workspace, one completely invisible during inspections. The prison believed it controlled every inch of the building. It didn't, but breaking out of the cells wasn't enough. The real problem was the water. Anyone who entered the bay without protection would be dead in minutes. Swimming was suicide, so the men did something no one expected. They stole raincoats. Dozens of them. Over time, more than 50 disappeared. Using heat and steam pipes, they sealed the rubber together, stitching the coats into an inflatable raft. They built an air pump from spare parts. Piece by piece, they constructed a lifeline, right under the guards' noses. Then came the most dangerous part of the plan. They needed time, so they made heads. Using soap, toothpaste, and toilet paper, they shaped realistic faces. They stole hair from the prison barber and glued it in place. When the guards looked into the cells at night, they saw prisoners sleeping peacefully in their beds. No movement. No suspicion. The illusion worked. On the night of June 11, 1962, the plan reached its breaking point. Something went wrong. One of the holes wasn't wide enough. The raft was harder to inflate than expected. The clock was moving faster than planned. Another prisoner, Alan West, tried to escape with them, but couldn't fit through the opening. Panic crept in. Every second increased the chance of discovery. Then the decision was made. They left him behind. At 11:30 p.m. Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers climbed through the holes, up the ventilation shaft, and onto the prison roof. The island was silent. The guards were minutes away from their next patrol. The men climbed down to the water's edge, inflated the raft, and pushed off into the darkness. The bay swallowed them. When morning came, the guards entered the cell block for wake-up. One prisoner didn't respond. A guard reached out and tapped the head in the bed. It fell to the floor. The prison erupted into chaos. Alcatraz went into lockdown. Boats searched the bay. Helicopters circled overhead. Divers scanned the water for bodies that never appeared. The FBI took control of the investigation. The US government needed an answer, fast, so they gave one to the men drowned. That was the official conclusion. It had to be. Because the alternative was unthinkable. No bodies were recovered. No raft was found. But over the years, strange evidence surfaced. Pieces of rubber washed ashore. Family members reported sightings in South America. A Christmas card arrived, signed by the Anglin brothers. Decades later, a letter appeared, allegedly written by Frank Morris, claiming he had survived. In 1979, the FBI quietly closed the case, not because it was solved, but because it couldn't be solved without admitting failure. If the men survived, then Alcatraz was never escape-proof, and the most secure prison in America had been defeated by patience, intelligence, and time. Alcatraz closed in 1963. Today, tourists walk past those cells every day, and behind one wall, there is still a hole. Covered, but not erased.